Hi guys, welcome to this longer podcast. It's me, Paul, your friend. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about why 2 parts. Because you'll see this is Loneliness Part 1. And I think tomorrow, certainly within 2 days, I'll be issuing the next episode, Part 2. Why have you done that, Claffy? Well, let me explain. The first part is a more general view of loneliness and a more personal view from myself about the way loneliness has affected me. And then on the second part, and I wanted to give you a bit of breathing space between the 2 episodes so things could go in, maybe integrate, maybe just start to evolve or grow inside you as a thought. And then on the second part, we'll go more deeper into what I would say is real loneliness, where it really affects us. And although I'll admit it, I am not probably the best person qualified for this. I've got a lot of processes and thoughts about it. So just because I haven't been this particular lonely or this depth of loneliness, I think I've got some really good things for you if you are feeling alone. And if you're not lonely and you go, oh, Cluffy, I'm not going to bother to listen to this. 2 things about that statement is, I'd love you to listen to it for these 2 reasons. One is you may become lonely one day. And if you ever do, you know you can come back to these episodes. I'll search it, I'll find it on Cluffy's website or my podcast thing of choice. But also you just might know somebody, and there'll be some telltale signs we'll be talking about that if you just can share this with somebody, you'll be doing them a wonderful service. So it's knowledge, really. Knowledge that you can act upon, because that's what knowledge is about. So that's my big picture. Come with me to the general picture in this part 1, and then let's dive deeply into, I'd call the real problem of loneliness in part 2. Enjoy every moment, okay? It all happens just after this.
Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey, my friend. Welcome back to this longer podcast, and however long it will be, or however short it will be. I'm not sure. Not sure because when I was writing my notes for this, I noticed that I feel very different about this subject. I don't know why. So maybe we'll have to explore that together. You see, what is loneliness? And that's even that part of my notes. I've made a note of saying, well, I'm shying away from this. And I've made a note about loneliness. I think I even mentioned that I'd be doing a longer podcast on it. But that was probably, I don't know, 2 months ago. And I keep seeing it, and I keep saying to myself, we've got to do something. I keep coming back to it. But I never got to, I made some random notes, but this time I've actually sat down a little bit and thought about it a bit deeper. Because you see, well, there's an enforced, let's put that back a little bit because I don't know where I was going. Loneliness was a problem for a lot of people before all this rubbish kicked in. And even now, those same people are probably lonely, and even more people are lonely. So some of that loneliness is enforced by shielding, I guess, or being out of work, or working from home, having needed to be placed in this secure environment of our house to work from home. And I can get that bit. I get that bit because I used to work from home, and I used to love working from home, and I used to, some of the times, wanted solitude because I wanted to do deep work. The work I was in needed my total focus, and I was very good at it, and I was very quick at it when I had this secure, isolated solitude, as it were, this deep work environment. And I was really happy to be there. It didn't bother me at all. In fact, it was what I wanted. But also, I can also see parts of the problems because I'm an introvert. So that sort of helps a little bit. But I'm also somebody who needs to have people in my life. And therefore, I can remember distinctly. You see, I used to work at home. Well, I still work at home, but in that particular past life of a different business, I used to do most of my work from home, but I could pop out, see people, do stuff. So it wasn't only when I chose to be alone. And sometimes that wasn't even possible because my 3 sons worked in the same place. We worked from home. We had one big office. We had a clinic downstairs, and it was pretty busy. And I used to enjoy that. Yeah, I used to be the butt of their jokes because that's what dad is when you've got 3 sons and they're working with you or around you, doing their own stuff, asking for help, which is always nice. And then me asking for help about the computer that I'd cocked up a little bit. But hey, it was a nice environment. And then when they went out, I could do my focus work. And it used to work really well. And then they left. They flew the nest of a sort. Joseph went to Liverpool. My elder son went to live somewhere else for a little while. My other son got blooming married and all this stuff. Well, he actually went to live. They flew the nest. They flew the nest. And within days, sometimes I felt I was going potty because I really needed some stimulation from somewhere. And initially you have a quick flick online and I'm supposed to be at work and I'm going, this is not for me. I'll find someone to speak to. I'll do something. But it really got to me because then when I stopped work, I had to do something about it because this enforced, as it were, solitude, this loneliness, it did come across as loneliness. But you could do something about that because it is like an enforced, but there are things that you can do. And I'm going to be doing a podcast with that very subject in mind. What are the type of things you can do to use this particular time to either use the solitude or find something to entertain your mind, to grow, to learn. So that's another podcast. But going back to this touchy subject of mine, you see, there's that other loneliness. What I've been in before as well. And this is where I struggle. I struggle because who am I? Who am I? I deal with other people's problems. Every other type of problem you can think of through my hypnotherapy, hypnosis. And I'll always say to people, I don't have to have either worked with a person with your particular issue because there's no one has ever got your particular issue anyway. And I don't have to have it to understand that it's an issue. I can be compassionate. I've got loads of things and I've got a particular skill that I've developed that will help you. Let's do it. And we can talk around the subject and they get my philosophy, they get the way I work, and we get results. But I don't know. I've been thinking, why do I struggle with this blooming subject? Maybe it's because, well, I've been there before. I've been in the real loneliness before when something has happened in my life. It was a horrible period of my life, and it was as if I was in a bubble, and it was of my own making. I understand that now. I could be with people. Even when I went to work and I was meeting people, it didn't work. They didn't understand. How could they? How could they understand? Because, well, I didn't tell them. They might have tried to guess, but I can put a brave face on, I can, or I could. I don't know if I can now, I suppose, but I don't need to. But back then, in that time, it was blooming horrible. And when I look back now, I wouldn't say it's made me a better person. It's made me a different person, I guess. Hopefully a little stronger, hopefully a little wiser. I think I could have learnt those lessons without the pain. Well, sure I could. But the thing is, I don't know whether that's because I've been going back over those things in my head, which I do, which you have to when you start thinking, why am I pulling away from this, where it is? But the thing is, I'm going to go through with it, because when I started thinking about these notes, well, maybe I can't relate to your loneliness. If you call it suffer, or you experience this real loneliness, not just enforced loneliness, the one we enforce upon ourselves. And yes, we do enforce it on ourselves, even though you say, I wish I didn't feel this way. In some way, unconsciously, we are creating this. And I bet we don't always tell people. And if we do, we don't probably tell them the truth. And it was hard for me to admit I was struggling, let alone tell people what I was struggling with. Because it was, we all have our blooming facades that we put up, don't we? This pretense, this look at me. Yeah. LAM disease, look at me. But not that type of LAM disease. That's what you get on Facebook, of those silly pictures you get. LAM disease, look at me. But I had this thing where I didn't want people to look at me. Where I had to admit, even with my skills, I was having problems. So maybe that's why I've just shied away from this subject just a little longer than I should have done. And if I have, then accept my apologies, because that's my problem. And I've always wanted to help. So let's see if we can get through this little bit together. And I think we'll be doing other stuff as well on this, because I know I won't be able to dive specifically deep enough as I want to. But I wanted to just ask you a question. If you come with me with this, you might be saying to yourself, oh, bloody hell, Cluffy, this is a bit down. And, oh, bloody hell, Cluffy, this is not, well, I'm not lonely. And that doesn't matter, because one day, God forbid, you may be lonely, and therefore you'll have a strategy to get out of it. But you may know somebody. Now, they might not tell you either, like I didn't tell other people. Luckily enough, I knew some processes, some skills. I did some various things. I'll say that more clearly. I did various things, used processes that I knew that got me out of it. One of the biggest one was just to record what I was feeling, but I'll go through that later. But I just wanted to ask you a question. How do we gauge loneliness? Because that was really troubling me when I was making my notes. How do we gauge loneliness? You see, sometimes when you go, we're talking to a client, and you're going, well, you've got anxiety or stress on a scale of 1 to 10. 0 being totally calm, 10 being climbing off the roof. How stressed or anxious are you? How scared are you? How is grief affecting you? And you can generally put a scale to it. But I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could put a scale to loneliness, because it seems to have, well, it'll probably have sadness in it. It might have grief in it. It might have anger in it. It might have the whole myriad of emotions, or the opposite of the positive emotions that you like to feel. So to give it a scale out of 10 is very difficult. So what I thought, can't stop there, Paul, because you are going to gauge this. Because if we can find out where we are, then maybe we can find out what needs to be done, or where we can go, or certainly mark our improvement, or certainly tell somebody, I'm a 5 out of 10 now, but something like that. So what I thought of is, how does loneliness affect you then? Because it'll affect different either areas of your life or different contexts of you. I mean, how does it affect you emotionally? Because that's where that sad or regret or fearful anger could come into it. So where are we? What are the emotions that you are affected by? Because that's part of the recipe, isn't it? And there's many more. I'm going to come into this a little bit more deeply. But what about physically? How is it affecting you physically? Is there stuff that you're not doing that you used to do? Even to the point of, do you go out? Do you go out for a walk? Or do you only walk to the shops and back again and don't say anything and look at the ground, hunched over? in your mind thinking. No, maybe that was me. But how does it affect you physically? Are you tired? Are you achy? Are you lethargic? So there's loads of different ways it can affect you. Do you feel tight? Do you sleep a lot? Don't you sleep a lot? So there's all those aspects of physicality that we can consider. And then there's mentally. Now, I had to think about this. What's the difference between emotional and mental? Well, to me, I guess, emotionally is just the way we feel, but mentally are the things I'm thinking about, the pictures I'm making in my mind, the voice that I speak to myself, or the voices I use. Maybe there's different people speaking to me, or the things I imagine. It's like the physical side that sometimes kicks off the emotions, or sometimes the emotions kicks off those pictures in your mind, your internal voice, the inner dialogue, and that will link into your physicality, your physiology. They all link together. So I want to find out the different strands. And then maybe you might want to think, how does it affect you spiritually? Well, I'm not a spiritual person, Paul. Well, maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe there's things where you'd less like to be closer to yourself is one way of putting it, because some people would say you are the God inside God, or I don't know. But there is, I think, in all of us some type of spirituality or a oneness of some kind. So maybe you make your own label for that and notice how it affects you. Now, okay, Cluffy, you're coming up with some good ideas there. They are good, aren't they? But what's a way to record this? Well, I thought of simplicity, because I could write all this down, and sometimes writing it down is great. Absolutely, Cluffy. Writing it down is a must. But we don't just have to write a list, do we? Because sometimes that list can be boring. And you see, we also work in symbols, and we also work in, symbols, pictures, colours, something which will just affect all elements of us. So I thought, well, a long time ago I spoke about, was it the wheel of life and the pillars and the buckets and things like that? Well, the wheel of life, don't know if it's still used. It's still pretty good, but it's very simplistic. You imagine a circle being a wheel, and you break that circle into segments. So if you just had a line across and a line across, up and down and across, you'd have 4 segments. Now, maybe those 4 segments could be emotional or emotions, physical well-being, mental and spiritual, or any other area of your life that this is affecting you by. So it could be career, could be relationships, could be anything. And you just divide it up into these lovely little sections. And then what we say is, well, let's have a look emotionally. How is it affecting me? If I was to put just in the emotional scale, how good it is or how bad it is. And you might even want to do a whole wheel of just emotions. My fear is right up here. Okay, I'm a little bit sad. So we put sadness as just colour in a little section near the middle. And we colour in a bigger section for fear. And it gives us straight away a meta view of the effect of loneliness. So I hadn't thought about doing a wheel, as it were, for the emotions or the physical side, and then the mental side, separate wheels. But I think that'd be a great idea to do, especially if you think, certainly emotionally, I guess there's more of them. But there could be loads of different things, because it could be relationships at work, relationships at home, your social life. So there's another wheel in relationships, I guess. And when we colour them in, keeping the lines, different colours for each one. But, you're by yourself, no one's looking, come on. And that wasn't meant to be facetious, but we are, aren't we? When we do this work, we just get a little bit focused and just be honest with yourself, because you can't fool yourself. So don't go, oh, well, this sadness, not that bad. If it is, it bloody well is. Just admit it. No one's going to be saying anything about you. No one's going to see this unless you want to show it to them. That's up to you. You could make them into spinners and stick them in your gut. No, you can't. Yes, you can. But that's completely way off track, Paul. But you could do that Wheel of Life for either the whole thing or lots of little bits. And then you could use it. Use that because this is effectively trying to find out where to start, as opposed to spraying and praying, and I'll try to do a bit of everything, and I'll just pick up a bit of hypnosis on Cluffy's bit. Where'd you find that? paulcloughonline.com/podcast. Here's how you get those anyway, in case you need them. So, the 90 seconds of hypnosis tracks. Why have I put hypnosis tracks on a separate website? Well, it's so simple really. I wanted you to have them all in one place so you can look through them all. You can find the particular one you want. I've even made them downloadable so you can put them on any of your playing devices that you prefer. You don't need Wi-Fi, you don't need the iTunes or whatever. You can put them anywhere you like. You can even burn them onto disk if you want. Where do you get them? Well, there you go. I told you it's paulcloughonline.com/podcast. If you're worried about your email address, please don't be, because they stay totally safe with me. I only use them to send you out that email and give you access. Simple as that. I send you a link, a special link, so you and only you can access those hypnosis tracks, because I want them just for you. And the other thing about this is you've taken responsibility. I don't want to make these open to everyone, just random. You have taken responsibility to listen and be part of this community of personal development. And I want to help you. I want to help you personally to get your dreams, your goals. And therefore, I'm giving you these tools, these protocols, these paradigms, whatever you want to call them, but in deep hypnosis. So just enjoy. Have more fun than you can stand with hypnosis. Oh, and we're back. Now, before you went into the hypnosis, though, spraying and praying, we don't do that. But say you were to do that Wheel of Life in regard to loneliness. So you've picked different sections. You may have a different wheel, as it were, for each one, or just think. But you pick one. We're going to go through each one anyway, but maybe pick the middle one, because we're going to start off with something that we can work with relatively easily. And then once we get into that habit or understand it a bit better, we can go to the more difficult one. But each time you pick one, I just want you to think, how the hell am I going to start this? What am I going to do? Well, let me just tell you. You look at one of those sections and you say, well, I'm really down on my, let's just call it physical side. So what am I going to do? Where am I? So be honest with yourself. First of all, where are you? And where would you like to be? Because you have to have some type of outcome, don't you? So think about it. You're not going to be maybe an Olympic athlete, but to get to somewhere, say 80% to start off with, where would that be in the scale of your fitness that you'd be happy with an 80%? So now when you get that, just imagine it in your mind for a moment. You don't have to go into any deep visualizations. Just have a moment and go, okay, that's a level of fitness, level of how my physical body to be, my flexibility maybe. And, I want to be going out and say maybe doing walks. When I get to 80%, I should be able to do a walk every day. I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. A lot of shoulds, but that's where I want to be. And we want to make it into a well-formed outcome. So knowing where we are is a good place to start. Knowing where we want to go is the next place. And then I just want you to think, and it's just going through a series of sort of questions to yourself. And just say, maybe, have you ever done this before? So what's your experience of getting fitter? Have you been fit before? And if you have, what did you used to be? What did you used to do? Now, if it's like 15 years ago, you might be at certainly a different level of being able to achieve that again, maybe. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But notice the regime you used to have. So what experiences have you had with this? And when you get there, what would it feel like to be at that level of fitness? How would your body feel? How would you be speaking to yourself? And just go through some of your senses just so you know what it would be like. Because it's got to feel good. Because I don't want you to think, well, I'm going to be running 25 miles every week. Because if you've never, ever done that in your life and you hate running anyway, that's not the right outcome. So what type of level of fitness? Maybe, well, I do enjoy swimming. And what else? What else do you enjoy in fitness? Well, walking's okay if I can do it in conjunction with doing something else. So maybe in a group, maybe. And you start to think of your resources you have. Do you know anybody who's done this before? Could they help you? Where else could you find ways to help you? Maybe there's some clubs along the way. Clubs, people who meet together. Maybe it's a yoga club, yoga sessions. Maybe it's a personal trainer or some things. Now, I know when we're talking about loneliness, sometimes we get a little bit of, I don't really want to go out and speak with people. Well, this is something, the end justifies the means of just pushing through that little barrier. But we do it in a gentle way, first of all, because we're not going to suddenly start doing it 5 times a week. You're just going to get a personal trainer once a week, and they'll give you stuff to do in the week. Maybe you would just go out walking for 5 minutes the first day, 6 minutes the next day. And you can say, Paul, hey, 5 minutes, that's nothing. Great. But we're going to start small. Start to be able to schedule the things that you can do so you get successes. And just notice where you can find the information or people or things that you could really excel at. Sometimes it's just looking at YouTube and noticing what's the best equipment to have. And you don't have to have equipment, so we're not going to make excuses. Well, I didn't have a set of dumbbells. You don't need things like that. You can find lots of ways to get fit. But it's your level of fitness. But it's doing something, because we're going to then look at the next area and the next area and go through the same thing. Where am I? Be honest. Don't try to cheat yourself, because you never will. Where do you want to be? What does 80% look like? Because sometimes it's easier to look at 80% and not the 100%, the total, the real package. What does 80% look like? Where do I need to go to get that? Have I done it before? What will it look like? What will it feel like if I got there? So you get like that feeling of the wish fulfilled at 80%. Who do I know has done it before? Where can I find out? Where's the information? And just make a list. And then what you're going to do, you're going to commit. So you do the middle one, then you go through maybe an easy one, then a more difficult one, and just fill up a page of different things to do, and then decide you've got to commit to do those things. Now, that's a pretty simple, and it's a cognitive way of working. And this is really to do with, I guess, a lot of loneliness, where we are stuck inside somewhere, or we don't want to see people, but we do. And something's stopping us. So, one of those things, one of those parts of that circle, maybe our hobbies, the things we like to do. Because if nothing else, if you go to a class and learn something, you'll start to meet people who like the same type of thing. That's a given. Whether you interact with them, and that's up to you, but that's a given. And I think you probably will. But you'll come out of it having learnt to do that thing better. And that gives you more confidence. That gives you a more self-esteem, that you're actually learning things. And you're becoming interesting. And you can become interested. And you've got common knowledge. You've got a common ground, as it were. But this is all very cognitive. And you see, if I was doing a coaching session, I'd really want to be one-to-one with you, because then I can respond to your responses. Because it's ever so easy to say yes and shaking your head at the same time, because that's what happens sometimes. The unconscious mind is giving unconscious signals. And you might be saying the thing, but I'm going, that doesn't sound right. Or the words don't quite match the tonality. And we can question that, but I can't question you on this. So this is really for you to start doing. But these are things that you can do. Because if you think about this, what is the effect of not doing any of this? What is the effect? What would be the effect if you let it carry on? Think back in the past when it was like a little snowball coming down the hill. Now it's getting a bit bigger. It's not going to get any smaller going downhill. So you can find other things. You can stop and halt that progress. And if you really want some help, like we're talking about personal trainers, and a personal trainer is also like a therapist. Do one-to-one. Maybe you might be saying, I can't really afford it, Paul. There are people who will help you. I know that. If you really and genuinely can't afford these things, there are people who will have concessionary rates. That's what I do when people cannot afford the therapy that they honestly and really need, and they so desperately want it. I'll find a way to make it work. Or you could do, if you just wanted at the moment, just thinking out loud for a moment, you can just email me. Give me a few ideas of where you're getting stuck. And that's the way we could probably explore, and I'll give you some really good questions, quality questions to ask yourself, and maybe a few more directions, or maybe, better than that, probably an additional episode. I'm sure there's going to be more episodes on this anyway, but one tailored to you, which I guarantee, Cluffy guarantee doesn't come in very often, but I guarantee you'll be helping so many more people because they would have the same type of issues. And I think that's a great place to leave this episode and let things just integrate, let things just come into neurology and just settle in for a little bit. Maybe you could do that exercise, look at the things that you want to do, and just notice where you are, what you want to, or where you want to go with this. Because there are so many different ways, and certainly loneliness is not incurable, it's not insurmountable, it is completely undoable. So get yourself together, have another listen if you wish, but get ready for the next episode, which will be in the next 24 to 48 hours. So then you can just move straight through that. There's a great process in the next part, which will allow you to dive deeply into how you want to be without any stress, any worry, any concern whatsoever. It's something I do quite a lot. So you're going to have great fun with it, but it will make a difference, even though it seems so silly, even though it seems so simple. You know what we do. In simplicity, there's genius, and it is a little stroke of genius, I think. So get ready for the next episode and enjoy your time in between. Here's the outros. Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast, because this is me, Paul Clough from Personal Development Unplugged, where I'm just trying to deconstruct, as they call it, deconstruct the complicated so we can make life easy and richer. So our return on the effort and investment that we put in is magnificent. And you can have fun doing it. That's the main thing. Have fun and getting better each time. So if you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, very first thing I'd love you to do would be to pay it forward and share it with anybody and everyone you know. Wouldn't it be fun if you just sent it to everyone you knew? That would be fun, because that's the way of this integrated field of learning where we just share everything we know. Someone will get the golden nuggets. They will, and their life will change, and you'll be the cause of their life changing. That would be awesome. Secondly, if you could just subscribe, because subscribe buttons do help. They help you to get the episodes on your platform of choice when they come out. No problems. You don't have to think about it. Off they come, ping, you get it. That would be awesome, because that helps with just the rankings in all those platforms. But also, if you ever get a chance, maybe just a little review. Hopefully it would be a 5-star review if you're putting a review up. But a nice review would be good. Again, that helps the ratings, which means if people get to see it because it's been rated better, it means they've got a chance to take the little golden nuggets that you would have shown and shared, and they get to get better too. And in all of that, we're doing two wonderful things. One is we're doing things that are good for you, they're good for others, and good for little old planet Earth. And secondly, we're leaving everybody and everything in a better place than when we first met them. And that includes little old planet Earth. Okay? Anyway, until next time, enjoy every heartbeat. Bye-bye.
Warning. You are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.